Nicholas Bornelis of Capital Link, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a session that is going to show us how the banking operation is supporting the complex transactional needs of shipping throughout the globe. Shipping is a global business. It is a complicated business and spans the globe. And we have been talking about safety, about crewing, about innovation. But at the end of the day, let's not forget that all these operations can be carried out as long as there is also a bank supporting those very complex and widespread needs throughout the world. So we are privileged to have with us Mr. Philipp Wuenschmann. He is the Global Head of Shipping of Berenberg Bank, and he's going to make a presentation how his bank is supporting global shipping. Philipp, thank you very, very much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you for organizing once again a very interesting event. Thank you. Yeah, dear all, if people think and discuss about shipping and banking, the discussion automatically moves into ship finance, which is obviously at the heart of all your business. All other banking services are then referred to as cross-selling. Typically in the past, the banker at the end of a discussion about financing asks you as a CFO or the client for some cross-selling, meaning running accounts, doing FX business, deposits, everything daily business, daily operations. You might have noticed, though, in more recently that today less and less banks ask that question. Let me explain or try to explain today why this is the case and what has changed in this respect. Therefore, I would like to draw your attention for a moment to the topic of transaction banking, which has been and still is a core element, as Niklas just pointed out, of any dealing you might like to execute. So it's at the heart of your business. From our experience, it is also among the most underestimated parts of deals, often considered to be techniques, operational, and sometimes even neglected for that reason. And in quite some dealings, it turns out to be a big mistake in today's regulated world. And therefore, I think most people know if this works and understand that this is pivotal for the success. Let me share the presentation with you, just a moment. So I'd just like to remind you, first of all, if I can move this, wait a moment. Just a moment. Leni, can you help me to move this? Okay. Let me just remind you of Berenberg. If you're not aware, Berenberg still is a privately owned bank run by personally liable partners. It has roughly 1,600 employees, so small compared to big financial institutions, but present in many locations, among others next to Germany and Hamburg and Frankfurt. It is present in London and New York with sizable business, and we are a private and investment bank. In shipping, as a Hamburg-based bank, obviously, we are very long. We are basically since 50 years, more or less, we work as shipping bankers as well. And we have always understood our business far and foremost as being transaction bankers, servicing our clients, help them to do the day-to-day business through Berenberg. Obviously, we are also a ship financing and advisory boutique to sum it up. But today, and at the core of our business still, we are a transaction bank. And let me go into this a bit more detailed. Just to setting the scene, we have tried here to define the maritime scope, and Niklas just put it right when he said it's basically at the in every dealing that you find ourselves supporting this and making this possible to an extent. Yeah, whether you sell or purchase a vessel, whether you are in an M&A transaction, you need an account structure. You need to make conditional payments. If you order a new building, you need accounts for making the installment payments and other yard payments. Yeah, P&I clubs need to settle claims for you and make payments in this respect. In your operations, you need to pay your seafarers, make your operations, and also not to forget today all these alternative lenders which have developed in recent years. They are not regulated banks, so they also use banks like Berenberg for offering their products to you. So if they offer you financing, it goes through a bank, and any payments combined with this activity is then also run through a bank. So you can see it is a major aspect of your business, and very often it remains invisible, which is good because then it works. But in many respects, it's also challenging and it needs your attention. If we as Berenberg look at this transaction banking, it's basically based on two pillars. The most important pillar still is and will be, from our perspective, the professional service of dedicated and competent people. So we have a team of 30 people who are in maritime business day in, day out, and maybe the same number of people in the background supporting that business internally. This human element, if I may call it, for this is supported today and since quite some years already by what we call the corporate portal, which is a web-based electronic banking system and has started to be just an electronic banking system. Today, this is something which has developed into an end-to-end integrated system, which basically starts to be used in the client onboarding process and can then be used by the client to interact with the bank throughout the whole life cycle of the relationship. This tool has been developed by ourselves and is today used by more than 300 maritime clients globally, and is established, and we develop this further. Let me just try to describe the process chain of a transaction service, because it's much more than just technically open an account. I think if we look at this process, there are three parts. The first part is the client onboarding, and the client onboarding today is basically a risk decision for the bank. It is about legal and reputational risk, and we have to decide whether we want to open a business relation with a client or not. Therefore, as for you can compare it to ship finance maybe to a certain extent, as we also gather a lot of information and run our due diligence on these information we receive from you. These due diligence processes are supported by systems such as Vessel Tracker or AIS, World Compliance, and other tools which help us to make these researches and due diligences. In the end, the outcome of that process is a holistic risk assessment regarding all involved stakeholders, transaction structures, and source of funds. This has to be documented and is basis for a risk decision whether we open the account or not, and is in the end, if you compare it to a ship financing process, it's quite the same and not too different. Then you have the second part, which is the execution and closing of a transaction. this is often the moment when the account is open, obviously, then to make a transaction happen. And this is often under pressure. It is very much the accuracy of final checks. Yeah, it really goes into the detail of checking things, checking numbers, checking payments, and so on and so forth. So this is a high pressure often, and it helps very much to have a correspondent bank network, which is then, let's say, pre-warned of a transaction, so that the transaction itself, when the closing takes place, runs smoothly, which is in the interest of all parties involved. From our experience, individual responsibility here is a need. Yeah, it's a must, and only by enabling these transactions, we are then coming to the third phase, which is basically the ongoing banking relation with the account, which is today very much supported by working tools such as Corporate Portal, as the interface to the client. So if everything runs smoothly, the client will not talk to the bank too much. He will simply make its payments through the portal electronically, and from time to time we have to check certain things. KYC updates from time to time, but it's much more than that today. It's also anti-fraud protection. Fraud is a major issue today in banks. The cybercrime is there, and shipping as an international business is exposed to this especially. Obviously, all the topics around sanctions play a role in our daily business, and our teams help to protect your business in this respect. If you look at the common features of maritime transactions, we have asked ourselves what makes it so different compared to the account opening for a private individual or let's say a domestic corporate in Germany. That's probably that we have very often this cross-border element, a multiple layer involvement. So you have various parties involved who sit on different parts of the world and need to let's say, align their interests in order to make a transaction happen. And we are in the middle of that, and very often have the impression to be a mediator between the interests. Obviously, very often shipping transactions are moving targets. So you have elements of ongoing negotiations. Timing is shifting. Just remember the last 18 months with the crew challenges, postponing transactions and so on and so forth. Obviously, confidentiality is a very important feature of our business. Yeah, let's in the end you also have the time zone management, as very often you have a party sitting in Asia, the other in the US, and you sitting in the middle in Europe. It's helpful or not helpful for making this a timely exercise. What does it require on the banking side? I think, as I mentioned, the maritime competence of our employees is really core for us, and we invest in this maritime competence by employing people who have, let's say, industry smell, if I may say so, and who are used to work in shipping companies. Yeah, next to the banking know-how, the shipping know-how is very important and helpful. Secondly, it's also understanding your client, know your client, yeah, KYC, but it's also understand your client's transaction, because we also have to understand where funds come from, for what is the purpose of a transaction, and so on. So the question, the due diligence, not only goes on you as a client, but also on your transactions more and more. For that, we have a very dedicated compliance team, and also our payment team is sitting next to us, basically, so that these colleagues who you normally don't see work very integrated with ourselves here on the relationship side. They help to protect you in the end also from the pitfalls of making international payments today. And just keyword sanctions is an important issue to protect you from making payments which are then stopped somewhere on the way. Yeah, obviously the other points I already mentioned, but one point maybe here again to underline is this ability for a swift decision making under time constraints. Yeah, as your transactions are moving and sometimes they require our fast decision making to change something or to let's say make things happen in the last minute. Yeah? And this needs people who can lean on their management, on someone who can take the decision. This is something which we regard as highly important. Just a case study, briefly. We have seen in Q1, we have seen a Middle East-based seller entering into a merger agreement to be acquired by an investor bidding through an investment company registered in the Marshall Islands. Typical situation. The seller, shipping company in the chemicals with a fleet, the buyer, a shipping company with a long-standing experience itself, and backed by a large US alternative investment fund. Our role here was we were asked at an early stage, this was professionally done, so we were asked at an early stage to set up the whole account structure for the buyer, including holding and operating accounts. We were asked then to execute or to support the closing payments and to enabling the buyer to start making operational payments post-closing. Yeah? And there you have all the challenges involved. Yeah? Given time frame with all the pressures involved, you have target companies which are domiciled in high-risk countries or offshore jurisdictions, which leading to additional regulatory assessments which we have to make. The ultimate beneficial owner check for a PE fund is something which you don't do just like this. It's a complex exercise. And last but not least, the sanity check for the fleet to make sure that the target fleet here in the share deal is also clean from sanctions and other things. To sum it up, a few, let's say, observations which we have made and which are maybe trends, if I may say so. First of all, it is about digitalization as well here, and we talk about the structured processing, gathering, processing, and documentation of information. And there are a lot of things happening in the background in banks to make this more efficient and digital. Secondly, it's about live tracking of international payments. Yeah, you can follow your payment, which is important. Third, what we see is a gray or blacklisting of high-risk countries. This is a big issue for shipping. Just remember that Panama has been put on a list of high-risk countries by the EU recently, which makes it more challenging for banks to transact on countries like that. Handling of sanction regimes, I also already mentioned here. Some let's say, last assumptions I might make, or call it hypothesis. I think our complex individualized international banking transactions in today's environment are prohibitive for fintech disruption. It will still require an individualized human competence also going forward. This digitalizations happened in the background, integrating all the systems, so the client interface with the back systems, and make the data transfer safer and more efficient so that you save time. Third, senior transaction bankers have become transaction risk analysts. So we have to take a reputational and legal risk decision in order to manage the bank's liability position. And in the future, maybe just to provoke a bit here, maybe the banker will also be asked to become the regulatory police for ESG compliance. This already starts to kick in and will for sure be a topic where we ask more questions in the future. And last but not least, let me express a little concern, but also a hope that the industry understands that this transaction banking is something which is very important at every corner of your business, and you are exposed to the risk of potentially being excluded from this banking services, as the industry is so international and acts between difficult jurisdictions in difficult areas with a lot of complexity. This is something where, let's say, many banks shy away, and so the industry needs to look at this and invest time into developing this with banks. And yeah, Berenberg is happy to be there. Nicholas, sorry, I hope it was not too long. It was a bit fast, but I hope I could draw some of your attention. Thank you very much.
Philip, no worries at all. And thank you for making a truly very interesting presentation, because I think when we think of shipping, we think of all the complexities with the logistics. When we think about banking, we think about lending. And you gave us exactly a very different perspective, how you support, business, shipping is a business. So you need to address and accommodate all these transactional needs. And thank you for sharing all this wealth of information with us. So thank you very much. And
thank you, Nicholas.
Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you too, and also a good conference for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being a great supporter and participant. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.